The Chase by Kudzuhaiku. Chapter 3, with 1,782 words. Are you ready to admit what you've done wrong? Dinky Hooves carefully considered Miss Cheerilee's words. Dinky was frustrated, angry, and very confused. Dinky understood that there was a problem, but Dinky did not know what she had done wrong. No, perhaps 5 more minutes after school will allow you to think about what you've done, announced Cheerilee. Dinky felt the hot sting of tears in the corners of her eyes and the burning pain of anger on her neck. This was not fair. Dinky thought back carefully on the events of the day, trying to see where she had gone wrong. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, who were older and much larger, had been teasing the smaller foals of the class, including Dinky. They had mean words to say to every pony, as usual. It was a common day-to-day occurrence, and Dinky took refuge in the flock of friends, just as her mother had taught her to do. Dinky had been content to leave things be and just ignore the bullying, the one thing that truly infuriated Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, being ignored. It was then that Diamond Tiara had shoved Pina Colada and knocked her down from the swing. Messing with a flock member was unacceptable, and Dinky made it clear by delivering a swift swat to the tender snoot of Diamond Tiara, making her yelp and panic. It was something Dinky had done so many times among the Pegasi foals within her mother's flock, the flock that Dinky had been raised in. The blow really wasn't enough to hurt. It hurt pride more than anything else. Pegasi had tender prides and were especially sensitive to having their pride tweaked. But Diamond Tiara had collapsed completely, falling down on the ground when Cheerilee had come over, sobbing and crying about being punched in the muzzle. Dinky really resented Diamond Tiara right now. Diamond Tiara had shoved a friend and a flock member. She had been mean as well as abusive. She had pretended to actually be hurt, and she had lied. Dinky hadn't punched her. Dinky was far too gentle to punch any pony. It had been a simple swat, nothing more, a snoot tweak meant to communicate a warning. And now, Dinky was sitting after school, well past the 15-minute mark, rapidly nearing the 20-minute mark. Each minute passing by was awful to endure. Dinky squirmed in her wooden desk, trying to figure out what she had done that was so terrible that she deserved this. Dinky slumped down in her desk, the first few tears now sliding down her cheeks. Cheerilee saw the tears and believed them to be tears of guilt, not knowing that they were tears of confusion and frustration. Dinky, I know that you know what you did was wrong. Are you ready to talk about it? Asked Cheerilee, her voice careful and patient. I didn't do anything wrong, sniffled Dinky, more tears coming to replace those tears fallen, her tiny little barrel now hitching from anger as well. Dinky Hooves, you punched Diamond Tiara in the muzzle. I did not, interrupted Dinky. Let me finish, said Cheerilee in an angry but controlled voice. You punched her in the muzzle hard enough to make her cry. That is unacceptable. You cannot go around punching other ponies in the muzzle, or anywhere else for that matter, explained Cheerilee. But I didn't punch her in the muzzle, protested Dinky. Enough, snapped Cheerilee. I did not want to hear it, she finished. Dinky felt quite infuriated, her own pride now terribly tweaked. Dinky couldn't even explain what had happened, that it wasn't a punch in the muzzle. It was a swat, and there was a big difference between the two. Dinky swatted her big sister too, and there was never any hard feelings between the two of them. Dinky glared defiantly at Cheerilee through her tears, nursing her injured pride. Pina Colada sat outside the schoolhouse, waiting on Dinky, determined to wait for however long it took. Dinky had been a real friend, a good friend, and when trouble had happened, Dinky had been there. It had been immensely satisfying to watch Dinky deliver a well-placed punch in the muzzle of Diamond Tiara. Dinky was always looking out for her friends. Dinky kept the group together, never allowing any pony to stray too far, always reminding them that they were safer in a group, which Pina Colada knew and understood on some deep level. Being an earth pony, with no magic or wings, all earth ponies had for defense was strength in numbers, and the protection of the herd. Dinky, even though she was a unicorn, clearly understood the value of being in a herd, which made her both a good friend and a good unicorn. Dinky clearly wasn't a snob. Dinky was practically an earth pony, at least Pina Colada thought so. Pina Colada felt a twang of frustration and anger when she heard Dinky's cries from inside the schoolhouse. A herd member was in trouble, and alone. Pina Colada struggled with the instinctual urges welling up inside of her, not even knowing they were instinctual urges. All Pina Colada understood was that she had very strong feelings to go to her suffering friend and stand together. Almost anything in life could be endured if you stood together in a herd, and you placed the weakest members in the middle. Pina Colada began to dance nervously on her hooves, feeling dangerously close to Tears herself. The terrible feeling of being very little and young, and being completely powerless to do anything about the awful things that went on around you. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon were the worst sorts of bullies. Being earth ponies, they threatened herd stability and caused the herd to break apart, exposing them to untold danger. Pina Colada actually burst into tears when she saw Derpy, Dinky's mother, landing somewhat clumsily a few paces away, wobbling on her hooves and trying to carefully fold in her wings. Pina Colada ran to Derpy, throwing her forelegs around Derpy's forelegs, hugging her tightly, seeking comfort and feeling comfort. When Derpy hugged her back, Pina Colada felt a wing wrap around her, and then she was crushed against Derpy's warm barrel. Pina Colada didn't understand why Derpy's hugs were so fierce, so crushing, but Pina Colada liked them. She felt warm, secure, and safe. Pina Colada had no way of knowing that earth ponies had a deep, instinctual need to rely upon the Pegasi for protection, fierce airborne protectors of the herd. All Pina Colada knew was that she felt extra safe in the downy fortress of being wrapped in Pegasi wings. Derpy could not help but feel that it was one of those days. She felt frustrated, a little angry, and a little happy all at once. It was confusing, to say the least. After hearing about what had happened with little Dinky, Derpy had tried to explain to Cheerilee a different perspective on what had happened. But Cheerilee was not interested. She had no desire to understand the difference between a swat and a punch. Both of them were hitting, and hitting was unacceptable. Earth ponies were numbskulls. Swatting and punching were two very different things. Swatting was a gentle, sociable nudge to let some pony else know that their behavior was uncouth. Punching was violence, plain and simple. Dinky and Sparkler swatted one another all the time, and Derpy never felt concern. Derpy would feel concern if the two never swatted one another. It would mean that they didn't care enough about each other to correct each other's social blunders. But if either of them actually punched one another, Derpy would have to step in and deliver some serious punishment. Derpy had never once had to deliver serious punishment to her foals. Both of them were even-keeled and well-adjusted, good-mannered, and equipped with proper social graces. This was all just another case of misunderstanding between the tribes, just like what had happened earlier, when she had snoot-bumped into Bucky. Handsome Bucky, with his fine tan coat and black mane. Derpy felt a distracting hot flush. Bucky seemed genuine in his efforts to overcome the misunderstanding. Cheerilee refused to acknowledge that there was a misunderstanding. Numbskulls just didn't want to listen to reason. At least snobs could be reasoned with, provided you can get their attention and that you were worth noticing. Derpy had given up and was simply nodding where it seemed appropriate. Cheerilee was entirely unreasonable. Derpy would have to pull poor Dinky aside later and praise her for doing the right thing. Derpy did feel a bit angry about Dinky crying, however. Dinky looked at the clock. It was now a little past the 30-minute marker. She clung to her mother and Pina Colada, wiping her tears on her mother's foreleg, feeling hot, bubbly anger causing her ears to burn. Dinky took comfort in knowing that her mother would understand. Dinky felt a tiny hoof press against her back, rubbing her gently. It was comforting. Physical touch was something that Dinky understood. All of the words in the world couldn't match one gentle stroke or a hug for comfort. Dinky felt herself being lifted on her mother's back, and then she felt Pina Colada sliding up behind her. Dinky buried her face into her mother's mane, ignoring Cheerilee's parting words, not wanting to hear Cheerilee anymore. She felt her mother walking from the schoolhouse, her steps slow and careful. If you like pina coladas! Dinky heard Pina Colada's words and felt a bit of comfort. She felt Pina Colada's nose pressing into her own mane, and the painful frustration of the after-school detention began to melt away as Dinky felt Pina Colada breathing against her. "I'm sorry, Mommy," mumbled Dinky. "Shush, Dinky Two Hooves. We'll talk when we get home. You're not in trouble," replied Derpy in soothing tones. "Today has been full of misunderstandings," she added. "It sure has," Dinky said, sniffling. I have a funny story to tell you, Dinky, said Derpy. Dinky did not reply. She just sighed and snuggled deeper into her mother's neck. Thank you, Dinky, Pina Colada said, wrapping her forelegs around Dinky and squeezing tightly, feeling a warm rush of gratitude for her friend. But Shirley was not interested. 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 Interested.